Good morning, everyone, again. Thank you for joining us in this brief on the East Jerusalem City Center Master Plan. With us are Professor Youssef Jabarin, Associate Dean for Research at the Faculty of Architecture at the Technion. Suhad Bshara, she's a senior attorney and the director of Adalah's Land and Planning Rights Unit. And Mr. Zakaria Aode, he's the director of the Civic Coalition for Palestinian Rights in East Jerusalem. Today we will discover more this plan that will have a great impact on Palestinians, residents of East Jerusalem. The plan violates the rights of Palestinians in all aspects of lives, in violation of international law. I will leave it to the speaker to explain more the impacts of this plan, but it's important to note that Adalah and the Civic Coalition are planning on submitting an objection on behalf of hundreds of Palestinians of East Jerusalem this March in the Jerusalem District Planning Committee. We will start with Professor Youssef Jabarin, who will explain the planning aspect of the plan. Please, and welcome again, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. In my 10 minutes, I will present the plan and some important aspects, social economic aspects and land uses aspects, special aspects of this plan, and to show you its impact on the Palestinians and its general impact on East Jerusalem. So the first, this plan is part of a major plan of Jerusalem, the master plan of Jerusalem, which is which called the Jerusalem Plan number 2000. And this plan is the most significant plan that direct the planning and development in Jerusalem. According to this plan, there are 5 city centers. Four of them are located in the western side of Jerusalem, and one of them is called the Eastern City Center, which is, as you see in the red circle here, in East Jerusalem. Generally speaking about this plan, I have published 2 articles with Liverpool University and other publishers about this plan, 2000 plan. If anyone interested, I will send it to you or through Adalah. But generally speaking about this plan, the 2000 plan, its major idea is to keep a solid Jewish majority in the city, in all parts of the city, in eastern and western side. This is according to this is a quote from the plan itself, to keep a solid major Jewish existence in East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. So this major objective of the plan, in fact, direct the spatial strategies, the territorial demographic strategies of Jerusalem municipality in the eastern side of the city. So according to the existing demographic figures, today there are about 40% of Jews in East Jerusalem, and about 60% in the eastern side are Palestinians. So there are, since 67 till now, there is huge, dramatic demographic changes in East Jerusalem. And the idea is of the city planning system, of Jerusalem planning system, is to continue to control the city. According one more thing about this plan, Plan 2000, in fact, confiscated about 66% of the entire Palestinian area in East Jerusalem through different land uses, such as open public lands, parks, all of these green strategies in order to, one day this is going to be a green areas, and in few months, few years later, this will be a settlement, in fact, a Jewish neighborhood, a new Jewish neighborhood. This is what's going on for many years. In any case, this is we'll be back to the idea of the city center of East Jerusalem. The idea is of the city itself. The major strategy of the city is to develop 5 city centers. The entrance, the Haredim one, the center, the area that connect between the entrance of the city to the old city. Yes. So this is the idea. This is the old city. This is the old city of Jerusalem. This is the eastern part, and the idea is to develop, to have a drastic economic development from the entrance of Jerusalem to connect it with the east, to the old city, and to continue to have a development in these areas. So this is the major idea of the plan. This is the city center of the eastern city center. So according to just a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, this is to your left we have this plan. It's called detailed zoning plan. It is a legal plan. Once it is approved, everything, all the development of housing, economic development, cultural development must comply with this plan, must go hand in hand with this plan. In order to evaluate this plan, I built some with my group some criteria in order to evaluate, to assess this plan itself. These criteria are related to the planning procedure, public participation, how the planners envision Eastern city center, the level of infrastructures, the property rights of Palestinians, or what we call distributive justice, economic development, the creation of new jobs, as each plan in the city asks for. Each plan for economic development must and have to increase drastically the creation of jobs and economic development. The other criterion is the cultural development and housing development. And the last one is the restoration, values and procedure. These are public criteria for any plan. That if we see any plan in the city, even in London, my recent book is about London and New York. So I have this general criteria to assess such plans, and these are publicly accepted criteria. This is very important thing to say at this minute. In terms of housing and population, the population, according to the only the natural growth of population is going to be more than 10,000 people in this area of the plan. And instead of suggesting thousands of housing, thousands of units, the plan suggested only 75 apartments. 75 apartments for this huge city center. Imagine that in London, in the center of London, you are planning, you have a new plan for the CDC of London or Manhattan, and you suggest 75 units. It's a huge job. And the needs, the basic needs, the immediate basic needs of the plan, according to the natural growth of population, is to have more than 1,200 units. So so the idea of this plan is to say, we don't want people to live here. The idea is to have this city center empty of people. This is one of my conclusions that I will submit to through my objection with Adalah and the coalition. So in terms of housing, the plan totally ignore the Palestinian needs, even according to the basic natural growth of population in this side of the city. In terms of economic development, I'm trying to be concise since I'm short on time. So in the economic development, according to the statistics of the city itself, the municipality itself, about 60% of the Palestinians in the city are under the poverty line. 60% of the households of Palestinians are under the poverty lines. In Israel itself, it's about 20% are under the poverty line. Among the Jewish communities in Israel, it's about 16% under the poverty line. We are speaking about very poor communities, 60% under the poverty line. And we were expected that the plan will say, okay, we have a huge problem of poverty. In order to elevate it, in order to change these socio-economic conditions, want to improve the economic of this side. This is a city center, a major city center for the eastern side. The eastern city, we want to develop, to have a massive economic development. But at the end of the day, the plan, in fact, didn't do anything. According to the economic development, the plan suggests 37 dunams. It's about minor areas for economic development. These areas that the plan suggests are existed already as hotels, etc. So the plan itself ignored the economic development, the economic needs of the Palestinians, and the reduction of the poverty levels, in fact, have not was not interest for the planners themselves. In terms of property rights, territorial property rights, special rights, land rights, what we will call here the distributive justice, the plan suggests, and what you see here in Hebrew, written in Hebrew 6.16, according to the plan, it suggests that to confiscate all the private lands which are allocated for public purposes, according to the law of 1965. So the plan suggests where we have lands for parks or lands for streets, cultural buildings, social buildings, health, all of these lands, I want to confiscate. In fact, the plan suggests to confiscate 55% of the entire area of the plan. What you see here, according to the plan, we have, in fact, make it what we call GIS, Geographic Information System. We have exact analysis of what's going to be in this plan, according to this plan, and we found that 55% of the entire Palestinian lands is going to be confiscated in this area. So instead of economic housing development, we have this land confiscation. And more than this, even in area what we see here, according to this plan, even in area that we call mixed land uses, the plan suggests to confiscate this area also. I will show you. This area that you can see here, call it mixed land uses. We have here tens of Palestinians, cultural centers, health, education system, education buildings, which are owned by Palestinian civil society organizations and by Palestinians. The idea is to confiscate them. So imagine that you have a cultural center which has been there for decades. The plan suggests now to transform its rights to the city itself. So in fact, in this major area of East Jerusalem, it will be the idea of the city is to confiscate a major confiscation of the lands according to the law. And this is written exactly. We just have um, I'm sorry for this. Okay. Yeah. Another thing, in each plan in in Jerusalem itself, and any plan, if you have a plan in center of London, of neighborhoods, in any neighborhood boroughs in London or New York or any city in the world, in order to have this economic development and housing development, you increase, the plan must or should increase the what we called, according to the law, the building rights, to increase the capacity of the housing and economic development of the plan itself. So we increase the rights of the rights of buildings. Instead of, if you have a parcel, before the plan you have, let's say we have rights to build according to the plan 50%. Generally in Israel, in city like Jerusalem, the city suggests to increase it by hundreds times in order to have the ability to build new houses, economic development. What this plan has been doing is just to treat the Palestinian city center as a village. This is sort of Orientalist agenda in East Jerusalem, to treat the Palestinian neighborhoods as small villages, scattered, dispersed Palestinian villages, not neighborhoods. They will not call them neighborhood of Silwan. It's a village of Silwan. It's not the neighborhood of Isawiya. It's the village of Isawiya. And to treat them as scattered villages, and to suggest very low right of buildings, very low percentage of buildings, of right to build, to increase your houses, etc. To treat them as a rural village, according to the Orientalist agenda of which has been for in previous times, ancient times, and the idea is not to let the Palestinians develop their own lands, the right to build their own houses, economic development, just to prevent them from doing this basic thing. Other thing, this plan is close to this side is the old city. So the plan is closed, very adjacent to the old city of Jerusalem. The plan did not suggest any connection between this city center with the old city. The plan did not suggest any connection with the other Palestinian neighborhoods, because these are not neighborhoods. These are villages, detached villages. So this is a major idea of the plan, to make this, to isolate it, and so to isolate it in order just to again, yeah. So the procedure, let's speak the procedure. According to the planning procedure, I've been teaching almost every single planners in Israel have been my student in recent times. We have the only graduate school of planning in Israel, so I'm professor in the planning school, I'm associate dean. So we have been teaching them according to the law, but also as a new culture in the entire world that become a significant culture of public participating, to let the public participate in the planning, in the planning decisions, in the planning doing, to ask the people what do you think of what is your visioning to the plan, to your area. This is what we have been in the West, in the Western literature in the 70s till now, decades of culture of let the people decide what's going on to be in the future in their neighborhoods. Let them participate in doing the plans, etc. This is a very basic democratic agenda of planning. Many cities in Israel have been I've been doing public participating, like in Haifa, where I live here, in Tel Aviv, etc., in every places. Also in western side of Jerusalem. But in this plan, the people, the Palestinian communities were ignored. No one asked them about their vision, about their needs, about their how they envision this city center, what are their needs, their cultural, economic, housing needs. Zero, nothing at all. Totally ignore them, totally ignore their existence. So a major thing which was dismissed in this plan is the right of people to plan their spaces, to develop, to produce their spaces. This is a major right. Other thing with the restoration.
I'm sorry, Professor Jabarin, we're a little bit over time. If you can.
1 minute, 1 minute?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, according to the restoration, just 3 slides in short, please. But these are important. Since I was woke up in early today in order to just to think about the last 3 slides. So the one thing regarding the restoration, the plan suggests to restore every Palestinian building in order not to let them develop them or to have more property rights or building rights. So the idea of restoration is against the Palestinians themselves. The other thing, as I told you, the plan suggests to have different CDCs, city centers, to develop different city centers in the city. So the idea, finally, the idea of this plan is, here we have one photo of the plan. I took it from the plan itself. So this is the Palestinian area, to keep it poor as is, and just to have a little bit of modifications. But if we go to other CDC, the entrance of the city, the center cities, the center of the western side of the city, the new plan suggests to have massive housing, economic development, to have the western side of Jerusalem as a postmodern city, intensively developed, with high density, and not to treat it as a village. Not as a village. You treat village in these plans, only only you conceive villages there in the other side, the Palestinian side, in order to prevent the creation of the new spaces, urban spaces. So this idea, I give you one example. I have many photos, but I'm not going to show you here. This is one example of the new plan of the entrance of the city. And finally, look at this photo. This is the entrance of the plan. As we see on the right hand, we see camels in Jerusalem. So the plan suggests to the Palestinians to live in ancient times. This is the area of the new plan. Suggests camels. There is no sheep here. I don't see any sheep here, but to suggest camels for the Palestinian development. And look to the left side of the entrance of the western city center. Look at the major plans, at the major development, huge, multi-stories, economic, cultural, housing, mixed land uses, to make the entrance of this city center as Manhattan of Jerusalem, but to keep the camels in the eastern side. This plan we must. This is not. I will conclude. This is not a matter of only planning and city planning. This is a major political issue regarding the rights, basic rights of Eastern Jerusalem Palestinian people there. It's about the basic rights of developing their own spaces and your own lands. And this is about the possibility, I think, of the Palestinian to have Eastern Jerusalem as a capital of a future Palestinian state. This plan caused huge harm for this ability. And this is why it's important just to raise the conscience about this plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Jabarin. We'll now move to Suhad Bishara, the director of the a senior attorney and the director of the planning and land rights in Adalah. Suhad will cover the legal aspects of the plan in a context of the occupation and annexation of East Jerusalem and the wider context of settlement project in the area, and also will discuss the next steps of these plans. Please, Suhad.
Yeah, thank you, Suhair, and thank you all for joining us today. Basically, I will try to translate what Yusuf just explained to legal framework and explain what this legally means, or what this plan legally means. Taking into consideration, one, the status of East Jerusalem under international law, and the fact that the unilateral annexation of East Jerusalem taken by Israel have not changed the legal status of the annexed area, which according to the international law, it remains an occupied Palestinian territory and its residents are protected under the IHL, International Humanitarian Law, which was of course confirmed by the ICJ in its 2004 advisory opinion on the separation wall. And second, the fact that under Israeli legal system, the master plan is considered a binding secondary law. Once it is approved, it becomes like a binding law which every authority needs to fulfill its instructions, policy, and vision. Thus, the master plan should be examined under first, international humanitarian law, second, international human rights law, including the right to development. And in this regard, I would like to note that the continuous occupation over a long period of time in the area is a very reason why some additional sets of international norms are to be considered. In other words, the duty of the occupying power to maintain public order and civil life requires taking into consideration additional bodies of international law. Now, the longer the occupation lasts, these obligations become more critical and of greater weight and importance. And in this context, this master plan will be we are talking about housing, adequate housing rights, social economic rights, as Yusuf presented, reasonable and sustainable living conditions and standards, right to development, economy, and so on. And of course, the obligation not to take any measures that undermine the right to self-determination and the negotiations concerning the future of East Jerusalem as the future capital of the State of Palestine. And lastly, in this regard, as some would arguably say that the master plan should also be examined under Israeli constitutional law due to the fact that it is an act taken by an Israeli public authority, including as an occupying power in this context. So I have two main comments. One, or the first, is I will start where basically Yusuf ended, drawing up on the fact that the planning process had no proper consultation or participation whatsoever with the Palestinian residents in the area. And of course, we are not talking about a military necessity situation under the IHL. The plan basically lacks any vision that places the Palestinian population in East Jerusalem in general, and in this area in particular, at the center of the planning process and purposes. I mean, the Palestinians, this relates to my second, were absent from the process totally. Thus, the development, welfare, current and future needs of the local population did not form the main motivation behind the master plan and its objectives. And the interest of the Palestinian community is not at the essence the details of the plan and its policy. In this sense, the master plan does not comply with any of Israel's obligations under international law, neither IHL, or more specifically Article 43 of the Hague Regulation, nor international human rights law. The plan does not serve the Palestinian population in the area, does not address their needs, as I've mentioned, and will prevent their future development. As such, it violates social economic rights of the local Palestinian population, as set in the international relevant covenants and the UN Declaration on the Right to Development, which brings me to the second comment. Not only that the plan does not aim to advance the right of the Palestinian residents in the area, as Yusuf just presented, the plan places many restrictions on building options and building permit. It affects current construction, harms the Palestinian economy and restricts development, harms educational and cultural and restricts their development, and will contribute to the transfer of Palestinian population from the area, because anyone who wants to develop, to establish a family, would need to leave eventually under this master plan. And now, taking into consideration that the Palestinian communities living in East Jerusalem suffer from a planning crisis related to the occupation dating back to 1967, which impacted and still impacts every aspect of the Palestinian life in the area, in all aspects. The main purpose of the plan appears to be placing many long-term restrictions on the Palestinian residents in all aspects of their life and advancing Israeli political interests. One might ask, in any case, Israel has been doing whatever they want in the area, so what is the need for this master plan? Why Israeli authorities invested in it? And I think one of the possible answers is, in my view, is control. Controlling economy, controlling education, controlling demography or demographic engineering, as one might say, controlling residential growth in the area and many others. Restrictions and control is what remains as the essence of this master plan, and it sets a very clear policy in this regard. Now, of course, again, before the master plan, it had and still has a clear policy. But the lack of master planning, now, again, the master plan sets a policy and it's like a law binding to any other authority working in the area. But the lack of a master plan allowed so far for some kind of exceptions, meaning if I have a plot of land in the area, I could initiate a very detailed master plan allowing me to build or expand or whatever. But once you have this master plan, which is a policy master plan, you have no room for exceptions anymore, and everything is much more controlled. I mean, every centimeter in that area is much more controlled under the long-term policy of the master plan. Now, again, I do not think we can understand the full scope of this master plan and its dangers in isolation of different processes taking place in the area, such as the Silicon Valley and other master plans to which Zakaria will refer to in his brief, and I will not go into detail in that. But I would like to address the wider context in one major point. Like since '67, the major tools used to implement the Israeli political interests in the area after the annexation were one, confiscations of lands, which massively took place in the early years after the occupation, evictions that we have seen all along and more increasingly in recent years, settlement building and preventing development, mainly through lack of planning. Now, I think this master plan indicates another step further, a proactive colonial planning that has a clear long-term vision. Now, according to Israeli law, when you have master plan like this, you have a legal basis for more development-induced confiscations. And Yusuf has just mentioned that over 50% of the plan's area might potentially be confiscated under this master plan, means under Israeli law. When you have a long-term basis, basically such a master plan means a long-term basis to restrict and prevent local building and development initiatives with almost no exception. You have additional legal basis for demographic engineering. You have a long-term basis for development-induced control, which is a process very similar or reminds us to what we have seen in Israeli proper during and after the military regime, starting with displacement, confiscation, Jewish settlement, and planning of or planning to control, except we see it in East Jerusalem because it's a very small area with a very clear, intense political interest. We see it much more extreme. And one of the UN Habitat reports since 2015 about East Jerusalem, they say, and I quote, "Every square meter in East Jerusalem is a plot of politics." And I think this is true about this master plan. Every provision in this master plan is a provision of colonial politics and control and demographic engineering. So what is next? We are currently working with the Civic Coalition to form a principal objection to the master plan, and Zakaria will elaborate more on that, taking the expert opinion of Yusuf, addressing all aspects of the master plan within the proper legal framework, binding in the area as an occupied area. The initial deadline for the objections were until March 21st, but due to a petition filed by NRC, I believe, arguing against procedural flaws in the submission process, the court order was issued to freeze the time count for submission, and we are waiting to see the final court decision in this matter. To my estimation, this will give us some more time to get ready to try to generate much more public awareness. But most importantly, I think this opens a great window for international pressure to prevent Israeli authorities from going forward with this plan. And I think we all would anticipate to take advantage of this window as much as possible, because once this process starts and the official submission is there and the objections is dealt with, it's almost a irreversible process. So it's very important to make as much as possible at this stage to prevent this plan from going ahead. I will end here, Suhail.
Thank you so much, Suhad. And now we'll move to Zakaria Ode. Zakaria will present the wider picture of the policies of annexing and increasing settlements in East Jerusalem and the wider context of other plans. He will also present the positions of the Palestinian community in East Jerusalem. Zakaria?
Good morning.
Can you just put on the camera, please?
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Okay, thank you, Suhair. Good morning, and thank you for all those who join us today in this briefing. I mean, I want just to highlight some issues. It's very important first to mention that during the last 53 years of Israeli occupation, Israel has been implementing a discriminatory urban planning policy, which always has one main objective, is how to increase control of the Palestinian lands expand and increase settlements and settlers in occupied East Jerusalem, and how to reduce the number of the Palestinians who are living in the city of Jerusalem. So this is like the main strategy, the main vision of all the various Israeli planning institutions, the municipality of Jerusalem, the Israeli government. So all these plans are having this objective. And in addition that, always these plans are trying to prevent any social or economic development of the city of Jerusalem. And this is, of course, will give them more space and justify or deny the right of housing for the Palestinians. We have seen that during the last more than 53 years of Israeli occupation, and it have been justifying Israeli home demolition of the Palestinians who are living in East Jerusalem. The city center plan has been impacted all the aspects of life of the Palestinians, their lives, their livelihood, their presence. You know, it's not enough that it is really denying our right of existence. You know, as Professor Yusuf said or talked, that when they put the plan, they don't see that there is a Palestinian society, a Palestinian people who are living in the city of East Jerusalem or in the city of Jerusalem, as a whole. It's not only that, even they have not been consulting us as Palestinians living in Jerusalem, which is one of the bases of any planning process. That, I mean, we are the people who are living in this part of the city. We are the people who are impacted or affected by this plan. So it is the basic issue that we should be consulted. Even this basic rights for us as Palestinian has been really denied, that there has been no any consultation. With all this, we know it's important to mention that as a result of all these planning policies that Israel has been implementing, that now the vast majority of the land of occupied East Jerusalem, we're talking nearly about 87% of the Palestinian land, is either directly or indirectly expropriated, and Palestinians cannot use or cannot build on this land. And we know that there is, according to estimation, and this is based on the so-called 2000 master plan, that there is a shortage or a need of 43,000 housing units for the Palestinian. Can you imagine? This is the great need. And when we look at the city is Jerusalem center plan, that it only allows 76 apartment or 76 housing, and even it doesn't allow or it doesn't give any opportunity for any housing development in the area and for all the Palestinians who are living in the city. So it's clear, one of the aim of this plan is to change the character of the national identity of the city, and to keep it as a marginalized, poor, neglected area or small communities surrounding the main city center, which is in West Jerusalem. So this is not only the only plan that we have been facing, and especially recently during the last few years. We all know that there is a plan, what's so-called Wadi Al-Joz, which is a plan to build in the industrial area, which is Wadi Al-Joz. And according to this plan, there will be 200 workshop or garage or a place for car repairs that will be demolished for the sake of building a high-tech compound in the area. And there is a plan as well for the area opposite to Damascus Gate, which we call it Al-Musrara. There is a plan as part of this plan, which is separated from the East Jerusalem city center, to build 4 hotels and services for all the hotels in this area. So this Al-Musrara plan connected to the city center plan and to Wadi Al-Joz plan. This is part of the vision and the strategy how the Israelis will control and keep and maintain the control of the East Jerusalem and tightening the annexation of the city of East Jerusalem. As well, it's very important to talk about the escalation, especially during the last year, 2020, in spite of the epidemic 19 corona epidemic, that there has been an escalation in the Israeli policies and the Israeli violations in occupied East Jerusalem. It's important to mention that during 2020, there has been several settlement expansion approved by the Israeli municipality, by the Israeli planning committee. We're talking nearly about 4,000 housing unit settlement that has been approved and has been put for construction during 2020. Nearly 170 homes has been demolished during this year, including 105 residential, displacing nearly 391 Palestinians, including 194 children. And as well, there has been an eviction order during the last year against 34 households, including 164 people in Sheik Jarrah neighborhood, and 20 households, including 68 people in Batn al-Hawa in Silwan. So these are, it's not only these plans and the various plans that have a discriminatory plan that has been put for East Jerusalem, for occupied Jerusalem, which aim to control the city, but there has been an escalation in all the Israeli violation in all the Israeli policies in Jerusalem. So this plan of city center has been rejected by all the segment of the Palestinian society, all the Palestinian people in Jerusalem, because they haven't been consulted, because it doesn't respond to the minimum need of the Palestinian in the city of Jerusalem. So as a response, there has been some mobilization. There have been established a committee which consists of technical experts, planners, engineers, and lawyers, and human rights and legal institution who has been following the process of putting this plan for implementation. And as well, there were several committees has been established in order to challenge this master plan. The various sectors are preparing a plan, as Suhad talked about. Adalah and the Civic Coalition are submitting a plan. There are various as well organizations such as Al-Awqaf, because they are affected, big part of the area is belong to Al-Awqaf property, the Chamber of Commerce, the Merchant Association or the Merchant Committee, as well the Hotel Association, some churches like the Anglican Church, the German Church, because all this area from St. George Cathedral to Schmidt School opposite to Damascus Gate, it's considered as public service and it will be confiscated. So there are various bodies or the various institutions who are preparing an objection to this plan. So it's very important. I want to conclude that we call upon international community, we call upon state, diplomatic missions, the United Nations agencies to take a serious action and to put a lot of pressure on Israel to stop this plan. It's to stop this plan, to stop the continuous and systematic Israeli discriminatory urban planning policy, which has been affecting the presence and the existence of the Palestinian in all Palestine and in the city of Jerusalem in particular. So as well, one issue I want to mention that this plan will destroy any opportunity for what so-called a future Palestinian state with Jerusalem its capital, because this plan will destroy the way the Palestinians would like to see their capital, the way the Palestinians would like to see Jerusalem, and by denying them the right to have any say in this plan. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Zakaria. Have a nice weekend, everyone, and thank you again for joining us.